Welcome to Unit 2.3, The Power of Hope and Positive Thinking. I'm Diana Lindsay. When a patient is diagnosed with a terminal condition, they often describe the experience as falling off a high cliff. This is what happened to me when I was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and given only months to live. It's very difficult when you're lying on the bottom of that cliff to ever believe you can stand up and walk. And I believe that many patients decide not to, and that they have the right to do that. But in my case, this just wasn't acceptable. There was a beautiful baby granddaughter that I wanted to see grow up. So finding hope was actually the most challenging thing that I needed to do, and I needed to do quickly. Hope is a powerful first step in the healing process, one that Jerome Groopman, an oncologist at Harvard, has said is even the most important medication or treatment that he has to offer. He wrote a book called The Anatomy of Hope, which is on your reading list, and in it he describes 3 patients, one with every reason to heal who nevertheless didn't, one with no reason to heal who did, and then his own story of failed spine surgery and the long journey back to recovery. When I read his book, I took tremendous solace in it, and I was encouraged and excited by tales of the chemistry of hope, our body's release of endorphins and enkephalins that both minimize pain and boost our immune system. Groopman didn't believe that hope was a Pollyanna, closing your ears to the threat and simply going blah, 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 hope. He felt instead that it acknowledged the significant obstacles and pitfalls that were on the journey and that it had no room for delusion. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, who works on positive emotions at the University of North Carolina, felt that hope was beyond the chemistry, that it literally opens us up and removes the blinders of fear and despair, allowing us to see the big picture and become more creative. Nevertheless, false hope has been taken out of the realm of medical care, particularly in the fields of oncology. When did this happen? I don't know the exact date, but I believe it took place at the end of the last century out of an ethical desire to give patients all the facts, combined with the fear of malpractice. But we've in fact gone overboard, according to Dr. Moshe Frankel, who used to be the director of integrative medicine at MD Anderson. Many oncologists, he says, greatest worry is not to give false hope. But in every situation, in every cancer, even in the most advanced situation, there are a small percentage of people that manage to survive. And I would add, like me. So it raises the thought or question if we should be telling such patients that they have no chance of recovery, because by doing that we actually create false hopelessness, which he believes is much worse than giving false hope. When medicine had few answers, prognosticating took more of doctors' attention. Today, however, with more treatments in the doctor's bag, this art has declined. Dr. Eric Widera, in a recent study, demonstrated how little is truly known about prognosis. Compared to diagnosis and treatment, he says, prognosis is like the unloved stepchild of medicine. And a study in 2000 of terminally ill patients in hospice found that out of 468 predictions, only 20% were accurate. Most, 63%, were over-optimistic. Another problem with prognostication is, even if evidence exists for a collective, it doesn't account for the individual. Nor does this evidence include the complementary theories or therapies or patient-directed therapies that the patient might select, and certainly doesn't invite the placebo response. What it does invite is the placebo's evil stepsister, the nocebo response. The nocebo response is if you believe it won't work, it won't. They've proved this in medical literature, although there aren't as many nocebo studies due to ethical concerns. But one that's quoted frequently is a study of a prostate drug. Men were informed that this medication could cause sexual dysfunction, and those who heard that were twice as likely to become impotent. I've had two personal stories of people who have described the nocebo response to me. One was a man who went to see a Brazilian healer. He had been unable to walk at the time, and as a result of the session, could walk, even into town. But by the time he got back home, he could barely believe that this was possible, and he found that his walking started to decline. Sometimes this can take place not because of our own beliefs changing, but because of the power of the beliefs of those around us. I heard a story of a medical qigong session in which a woman also was able to take steps that she had not been able to take before. But when her husband re-entered the room and rushed to support her, she lost the ability. The placebo effect is not the only place that we find what are now called limiting beliefs. This is the sense that of what it is we as humans are capable of doing. Now, I would have thought, and I have a limiting belief, that my vision is my vision and that my beliefs can't impact it. But actually, this proves not to be the case. One study measured, called the eye chart study, primed people with the expectation that they would only be able to read the first few lines in an eye chart. Many of us have this experience. We know where the E is, we know where the F and P is, and we know we can't see below that, so we don't even bother trying. But in this experiment, they reversed all these letters and shifted the chart so that so numbers 5 and 6 were now 3 and 4. As a result, people were able to see letters that they couldn't see before. So the experimenters did another study, this time with the idea of fighter pilots. They primed participants with statements like pilots have excellent vision and improvement occurs with practice. And then they gave participants an experience of flying a realistic flight simulator versus a broken one. They further added a motivation condition, try and you will succeed. In those that flew the realistic simulator, their vision improved. They did this again with athletes. Again, not real athletes, but simply by priming the idea that athletes have better vision than non-athletes. They then had participants do jumping jacks and others do skipping. Because jumping jacks is perceived to be more athletic, those who did jumping jacks had better vision. Now, optimism, this taking hope beyond this general idea and attitude towards life, has been shown to increase longevity. Nuns who wrote positive autobiographies in their 20s lived 9 years longer than those who didn't. Students who were pessimistic as students died younger when they were tracked years later. In fact, general mortality rates in the elderly show that those who are optimistic live longer than those who aren't. It also improves the quality of that life. It makes people more healthy in the present, independent of other factors. It can prevent illness. Students who scored higher on optimism at the beginning of a semester reported fewer symptoms. It's protective against stroke, cardiovascular disease, frailty, against major diseases like HIV, as well as the more common cold. Positive affect speeds recovery following surgery. It also impacts, again, the quality of that recovery. After a heart attack, 15 out of 16 of the most pessimistic died in the next decade, while only 5 out of 16 of the most optimistic did. So this has led scientists, in particular Martin Seligman, to call for a new field, the inquiry into positive health, which is diagnosed as a state beyond the mere absence of disease. Seligman called for a field that could test the hypothesis that positive health predicts increased longevity, decreases cost, improves mental health, and results in a better prognosis when illness strikes. And he proposed various subjective, biological, and functional criteria. Biological measures have already begun to be studied. One is that optimism is associated with a healthy lipid panel and lower cholesterol. That's the good things. At the same time, minimizing the bad things like cortisol. But just for our own thinking, let's see if we can follow along with the scientists. What other measures might positive thinking impact? How about just our subjective sense of well-being? What about our sense of control over our health? Would it limit or enhance our creativity or our grit? How about how well you just function in everyday life, walking up the stairs, lifting what you need to lift? And do you think it might impact whether others offer support to you? So in your personal journal, ask yourself, does hope have a role to play in healing? And if so, what is its role? And if you don't believe it, why not? Where do you find hope, particularly in adversity and in challenging situations? And how do you tend that hope during setbacks? Also think about, how would you like your doctor to communicate bad news with you? Is there a way to combine honesty with hope? Share that with your fellow classmates and see if you can improve the medical profession in years to come. Thank you.